I think, OJ, you might be right here, because I noticed, and I mentioned it, that the Greater Manchester Police are saying that they've had a look at several properties on the same estate, and they think that it doesn't meet the evidence threshold for criminal proceedings for gross negligence manslaughter or corporate manslaughter. I think that needs to be looked at again, actually, because I think, I don't know, what recourse do people now have to go after to get some redress from the organisation responsible for putting this right?
I mean, absolutely, and I'm surprised the police have said that, because what threshold are they holding it to? I mean, you could see the state. We saw the images, the pictures of the damp and mould in the home. The fact that healthcare professionals, other public service professionals, have written in to state they are worried about the health and safety of the family and our, but now he is dead as a result of that. I don't know what constitutes as corporate manslaughter in that case, but it's happening across the country, and I definitely do think it needs to be revisited, because otherwise it's going to cost the lives of more innocent social housing tenants. And I mean, 5 years on from Grenfell, these housing providers have had time to learn lessons and make changes. But what we're seeing, and what we've seen in this case, is clearly no lessons have been learned.
Let me put this to you just finally. I've had, since we were discussing this particular case on Friday, people rang in to say, I've been involved in the tenants of social housing. I've been round to look at various properties throughout my career, and one of the problems is that people just don't know how to look after their properties. They don't know how to ventilate them properly. They don't, and so damp and mould rises as a result, and people are moved around, but the mould keeps happening because they don't know how to look after it. In your experience, is that true?
Absolutely not. I can tell you that firsthand. And what housing providers and housing professionals tend to do, and they've even admitted this themselves, because I've been in meetings with them, they've said there's a whole stigma and there's a way they go about damp and mould, and that is to blame it on the tenants. They go back and tell them to open their windows, stop running the shower, stop drying their clothes indoors, when fundamentally they don't know nothing about the science of mould and the fact that it's due to poor ventilation, often on their behalf in terms of the building, the structures, the fact that they use cheap materials. I've been into new builds. I've been into new buildings that are only 5 years old, falling apart, and that's due to the way in which they're built. And what we're seeing is it's usually because they're prioritising cost efficiency over the health and safety and conditions that tenants are living in, and that's the real issue. It's not tenants. It's not down to tenants, and they cannot use tenants as scapegoats, because they've been complaining. I can prove in a lot of cases that they've been complaining for years.
Kwejo Tweneboa, social housing campaigner, do look at the videos that he posts regularly onto his Twitter feed. They are horrific, the conditions that people are, in some cases, I think, being forced to live in, or at least, and this is the part of the story that is just so awful. It's not as if this came out of nowhere. It's not as if it happened overnight, that it couldn't have been expected, that it was a tragic accident. The coroner heard from an expert in mould who said that there had been extensive mould on the walls and ceilings of the kitchen, bathroom and bedroom for some considerable time. Awab's dad said he'd noticed black dots of mould in the kitchen in October 2017 and that property managers had told him to paint over it. The mould had returned by October 2018, and by May 2019, Mr. Abdullah, that is Awab's dad, was making frequent complaints and had asked to move home. 4 years, this family said, this isn't right, please can you see to it, please can you deal with it. And 4 years, for whatever reason, the Rochdale Borough-wide Housing said, nah. And it's that I think ultimately, or at least partly, has been involved in the death of a 2-year-old boy. And it is completely and utterly avoidable. I think Greater Manchester Police need to go back and have a look about whether or not thresholds might be met for criminal action to be brought. And I think whoever's in charge of Rochdale Borough-wide Housing needs to lose their job. 5:17, come to your calls in just a moment. Here are the news headlines with Amelia Cox.
The Housing Secretary has condemned the death of a toddler who was exposed to mould while living in social housing. At least one person is said to have been killed in Kyiv following a number of Russian airstrikes across cities in Ukraine. And the Prime Minister insists this week's autumn statement will fix the UK economy, but refused to apologise for his predecessor's mistakes. LBC weather, rain moving northwards tonight. It will be followed by scattered showers for southern and western areas, lows of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are queues on the M1 southbound after an accident earlier on near junction 10 for Luton Airport, but all the lanes are back open again. In South Ruislip, West End Road is closed in both directions between Bridgewater Road and the A40 at the Polish War Memorial. That's because of an accident, so there are queues. There are long delays on Wood Green High Road in both directions to Wood Green Station because of roadworks. In Kingston Vale, there are queues on the A3 both ways towards the Robin Hood junction. That's because of emergency water repairs. On the trains, London Overground have no service between Stratford and Richmond or between Stratford and Clapham Junction. That's because of a security alert. And on the tube, Angel Station on the Northern Line is closed. That's because the escalators aren't working.
This is LBC. Streaming now on Prime Video.
Do you remember our manifesto? Do you remember what it said?
Number 1, love is impossible. Number 2,
if love is impossible, we must believe in the impossible.
we must believe
In magic.
Mammals. Starring James Corden, Melia Kryling and Sally Hawkins. Streaming now on Prime Video.
Call Tom Swarbrick 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
Do you know the average amount people lose to online shopping scams? It's £642. At Lloyds Bank, we're determined to tackle fraud together with our customers. To find out about the latest scams that are out there and for expert advice on the different ways you and your family can stay safe, search Lloyds Bank Fraud Hub. Lloyds Bank, by your side. Statistic quoted is sourced from the 2021 UK Finance Fraud Report.
To save money, I was told to stop feeding Pickles his favourite treat. I got a Labara SIM instead.
Switching to Labara could save you over £10 a month, allowing you to keep doing some of the things you love, plus a reliable network and excellent customer service. So, why not make the smart choice today? Search Labara Switch and Save. Saving based on survey of over 15,000 new Labara customers, rated excellent on Trustpilot. Terms apply.
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. One day, farmers will use augmented reality to monitor the health of their soil and run irrigation simulations to help ensure the best yields. And urban planners will model traffic solutions in the metaverse to help decrease commute times, paving the way for less congested cities. The metaverse may be virtual, but the impact will be real. Learn more about what Meta is building for the metaverse at meta.com/metaverseimpact/EN.
At Christmas, everyone should be able to stream festive hits. video call loved ones.
Hi, love. Oh, I like your new hair.
And search the word that Dad clearly made up.
Of course it's a word.
Millions of people struggle to afford data. That's why we set up the National Data Bank with Good Things Foundation to help those in need stay connected. Search O2 Christmas SIM card to send free data to someone who needs it. O2, we're better connected.
Subject to availability, 1 voucher per person, minimum 7 gigabytes guaranteed. O2 pay-as-you-go SIM required, SIM not provided, terms apply. Now that the holiday season is over, many timeshare owners are facing a winter of expensive upkeep. With rising inflation, now more than ever, we need to look after our money. If you own a timeshare in Spain or the Canaries and bought it after 5th of January 1999, you may have been missold. mytimeshareclaim.co.uk could help you exit your contract and receive substantial compensation. To find out more, text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900 today.
Calling all landlords and developers. Is your residential building empty? Maybe it's half full. Introducing FindFair, the rent guarantee company. FindFair will guarantee your rent for 1 to 5 years with no commission or management fees. Join thousands of owners already guaranteeing their rent through FindFair. For more information, call FindFair on 0208 554 0500 or visit us at findfair.com. Subject to acceptance, terms apply.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
22 minutes past 5 is the time. The coroner in this horrendous case concluded in her remarks by asking this question: how in the UK in 2020 does a 2-year-old child die due to exposure to mould? The coroner said this issue is not simply a Rochdale problem, nor is damp and mould simply a social housing problem. It is a significant issue in the private sector too. There is little doubt that the tragic death of Al Abishak will and should be a defining moment for the housing sector. But you just know that it won't be. You know that it won't be. Because I think in part because there still continues to be in various sectors of public institutions, but actually perhaps more prevalent in private ones, the attitude of, well, someone else will sort it, someone else will deal with it, not my problem, I'll just ignore it, it'll go away. There is I can see very, very little evidence of people jumping up and down in those institutions saying, no, this isn't good enough, I wouldn't live in these conditions, so no one else should live in these conditions. If it is literally your job to make habitable the roofs over people's heads who otherwise would have nowhere else to go, particularly who have nowhere else to go in social housing, then I don't understand what consequences befall those organisations if and when something as tragic as this is happening. Sam's in Leighton. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. Condolences to the 2-year-old's family. That's a sad case. But what I really wanted to touch on further to your previous caller, I agree with most of what he said. But one thing I don't agree with is when it comes to residential behaviour. I do believe that residential behaviour does contribute towards mould, but ultimately it is the responsibility of the housing associations to try and nip it in the bud from the get-go. What I mean by that is by sending surveyor down to the property to actually have a look at what's going on, what the root cause of the actual damp and the mould is, and rectifying that situation early on for it not to progress onto severe sort of mould and damp. So that's one side of it. The other side is education with the resident. The resident is not really understanding of what mould and damp is. A lot of the time, sometimes people say, I've got damp everywhere, or I've got mould everywhere, but they don't really know the difference between damp and mould. So then it's about an educational process of making them understand that this is what's going on, what the cause of it is, etc. Now, I do believe
that's fine, and I think the two are compatible. You can educate people about what the causes of damp and mould might be, that ventilation is really important, what have you. But at the moment at which, and after years of a tenant in a house, in this case Awab's dad, saying there's mould here, there's damp here, there's mould here, there's damp here, there's more mould here, there's more damp here, I need some help here, and not getting any response at all,
I agree.
That's where the blame lies.
I fully appreciate and understand, and ultimately it lies down with the housing association to rectify the issue. Now, I mean, it could be simple things like extractor fan not working in the bathroom, or it could be gutter problems or gutters blocked, and it's simple issues like that can be resolved just overnight to eradicate that problem. But then there's other times where a resident moves into a new property and is not really given like a handbook or any explanation of how to use the heating system properly, how to use the thermostat correctly to regulate the temperature, so you're not having fluctuation of hot and cold temperatures, which obviously promotes mold growth. Then
Sam, I'm not denying any of this, but I think that is obviously really important in this. But up to that point, when they are now saying, hang on, we've got a problem with mould here, and are saying it year after year after year, the minimum you could expect, I think you ought to expect, out of either a private household owner or particularly in the social sector, is that someone listens, that someone acts, that someone takes responsibility. Minimum requirement is that someone picks up the phone. Sam, thank you. Peter's a new caller in Croydon. Hi, Peter.
Hello, Tom. I hope you're well.
Hi, sir.
Right, okay. I have been dealing with local authority properties that suffer from mould since 2014. I perhaps worked for an informed local authority, and from 2016 to 2021, visited 3,000 homes in that local authority. They only had 13,000 tenanted properties, but 3,000. They had mould, and like your previous caller said, damp, because damp can be misconstrued as mould. There's lots of different types of damp.
And you were brought in by the local authority who were responding to people's complaints?
I worked for the local authority at the time, and I had a passion for mould. I had a very strange passion.
Someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. And actually, it all started, if you've got a couple of minutes, I went into a property. It was horrendous. The mum was staring at the wall. The two little girls, twins, about 3, were on the floor. Dad was angry, abusive, threatening. I can understand why, because it was pretty horrible. And he wouldn't listen. And I said, I'll tell you what, let me do what I want to do, and I'll come back a month later and you can talk to me as close as you're talking now. And I went back a month later. Dad was sitting on the sofa staring at the wall. Mum was bouncing up and down saying, come in, look at my flat, look, I can buy my daughters a new mattress. I don't have any towels on the windowsill, soak up the condensation. And that was just ventilation.
Well, that's great, and I accept that, and I understand that, and people need to look after their homes that they're in, granted. I still don't think it absolves responsibility away from those organisations whose job it is to try and look after the conditions that people are living in. And if people are telling that authority this house, this home is uninhabitable for whatever reason, it is their job to get that family out of there. Peter, thank you for the call. 5:29, let's get some business news. Chris Justin joins us from 7 Investment Management, and no surprise, Chris, we're seeing food prices increase.
That's right, but quite specifically for big name brands, and it's outside of the national average range, I'd say. So this is which the consumer group, they conducted a survey across some of those sort of big name popular brands, and it specifically looked at 79 items across Asda, Ocado, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Tesco and Waitrose. So not just one store, not just a couple of brands. And they looked at a 30-day period in 2020, and then they compared it with 2022. And the differences are really, really surprising. So a 460-gram bottle of Heinz ketchup has risen by 53% in price in 2 years. Anchor butter up 45%. Dolmio lasagna sauce 47%. Twinings tea bags, if you like a cup of tea, Tom, 100 of them at one particular shop were up by 64%. This is all just compared to 2020.
I literally buy all those things. I'm listening to your list, and they are all in the shopping basket.
Well, bin the Dolmio and get some some passata and make a spaghetti bolognese.
If I want food tips, I'll get food tips.
Well, no, but the reason I think it just outlines just so well is you kind of said it there, is that we are loyal to certain brands. We do it by default when we go into shops. We know the taste that we like, but we have to be more promiscuous with what we buy, because whilst loyalty clearly is a virtue in many areas of our lives, I think that when we arrive at the door of the supermarket, it should absolutely remain there, as demonstrated by these price rises.
And tell us finally the effect of Brexit on one food producer.
Yeah, this is really interesting, this. I think we do talk an awful lot about the impact of economic conditions and, as you just mentioned, politics at headline level. We do it pretty much every day. But this story just shows the real impacts at business level. And it's a Cheshire cheese company, and that's based in Macclesfield, founded in 2010. It's been sold to a competitor after losing £600,000 in sales post-Brexit. So, this all relates to prohibitive export costs, essentially, and it just made selling to European customers unviable. So just to quantify that, and again, this just becomes an anecdote otherwise, after growth of around 30% a year since it was founded in 2010, when Brexit rules then came into force, things like a health certificate for £180 on a retail order. So even if that order itself was only £30, you've then got to put another £180 cost on top just to send a health certificate with it into the European Union, meant that the business wasn't able, therefore, to meet that demand, because either the price tag would have been too high for those customers, or they'd have had to end up swallowing that huge loss.
It's scandalous, isn't it? I mean, it's just another example, frankly, Chris, of we started far too far away. Chris, thank you for your time. Chris Justin, you are from Seven Investment Management. Come to more of your calls in a few moments. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC. 5:32 news headlines. Amelia Cox.
The Housing Secretary says challenging times are no excuse for the death of a 2-year-old boy in social housing in Rochdale. Michael Gove has criticised the local authority and housing association after Awab Ishak was exposed to mould. Officials in Ukraine say there have been more Russian airstrikes across the country, including in the capital Kyiv. The mayor says at least one person has been killed and half the capital has been left without power. And the Prime Minister says a pay deal sought by the Nurses Union is unaffordable. Earlier, union leaders who are looking for up to 17% held talks with the Health Secretary, who says his door remains open. LBC weather, rain moving northwards tonight. It will be followed by scattered showers for southern and western areas, lows of 3 degrees.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
These incredibly expensive talking shops, or should that be talking cops, what do they actually achieve? Multi-million dollars. Britain's involvement alone you can count in the tens of millions of pounds of going down to this G20 in Indonesia. Do you think by the end of this G20 there'll be peace in Ukraine? No, of course there won't. If we go back to the recent COP, did that suddenly bring about a drastic change? No. Why do we allow them to rack up expenditure in the tens of millions of pounds?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
At Christmas, everyone should be able to stream festive hits. Video call loved ones.
Hi, love. Oh, I like your new hair.
And search the word that Dad clearly made up.
Of course it's a word.
Millions of people struggle to afford data. That's why we set up the National Data Bank with Good Things Foundation to help those in need stay connected. Search O2 Christmas SIM card to send free data to someone who needs it. O2, we're better connected.
Subject to availability, 1 voucher per person, minimum 7 gigabytes guaranteed. O2 pay-as-you-go SIM required, SIM not provided, terms apply.
Maybe you're in the business of sending laptop power cables to Leeds, mustard to Dijon, or knitwear to New Jersey. Christmas is a time when you're at your busiest, so send your urgent business packages with mailboxes, etc. We'll find the best courier for your parcel and help with packing, tracking and paperwork too. For UK and worldwide delivery this Christmas, search mailboxes, etc. Christmas possible. If you've lost £3,000 or more in a scam or fraud, then tell CEL. CELsolicitors.co.uk specialise in confidential, no-win, no-fee fraud and scam recovery. So if you started a relationship online and were tricked into sending them money, you could have been scammed. Don't let them get away with it. Let us help you try to get your money back. Tell CEL. We listen, we care, we win.
The greatest asset of any business? People. Because with the right people in the right seats, brilliant things happen. Total Jobs make it easy to find the right people for your business. So, find your people with Total Jobs. A team you can trust. Start growing your team today at totaljobs.com.
To save money, I was told to cut back on takeaways. Beans on burnt toast again? I've got Labara Sim instead.
Switching to Labara could save you over £10 a month, allowing you to keep doing some of the things you love, plus a reliable network and excellent customer service. So, why not make the smart choice today? Search Labara Switch and Save.
Pizza's here!
Saving based on survey of over 15,000 new Labara customers, rated excellent on Trustpilot. Terms apply.
As a business owner, you know that Rome wasn't built in a day, and business value can't be increased overnight. You need a long-term value strategy which focuses on the key areas that increase business value, whilst also improving the day-to-day running of your business. At Barnes Rofe, we specialize in offering owner-managed businesses strategic advice, making sure you're maximizing your business value. Why not contact the specialists at Barnes Rofe for a free initial meeting? Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
Can a smart thermostat reduce my bills?
That's a really easy question to answer. Yes. In fact, our sleek new Hive Thermostat Mini could save you up to £311 per year on your energy bills, because it helps you control your heating and hot water from wherever you are. And with 20% off in the Black Friday sale, it's now £95.20. Offer ends 30th of November. Search Hive Smart Thermostat. Terms and exclusions apply. Savings based on an average annual energy consumption of 10,578 kilowatts per hour at 10.3p per kilowatt per hour.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Tom Swarbrick.
At the G20 in Bali, Rishi Sunak has been talking about nurses' pay. We'll tell you what he said in just a few moments. I still don't think it is satisfactory that the housing association involved in this utterly tragic case of this 2-year-old who died as a direct result of the mould in their home are able to say, very, very sorry, lessons are being learnt, it won't happen again. That isn't enough. Here's a tweet here. I worked for a housing group for years. I was the man that stopped complaints going to head office, a system where you respond to the ones that shout the loudest. MPs got involved generally on an individual case and then leave it well alone. I got out, says this person, broken. It's just not clearly nowhere near good enough that there is no action beyond the sorry, beyond the it won't happen again, is there? 0345 6060 973 is the number, 84850 to text. You can tweet at LBC. Let's turn to this. At the G20 in Bali, Rishi Sunak was talking and was asked about the nurses' pay.
We have enormous gratitude for our nurses and indeed all the other workers in the NHS for what they do and have done for us over the past couple of years. But what the unions are asking for is a 17% pay rise. And I think most people watching will understand that that's unaffordable. And the way we deal with these situations, because of course they're difficult and of course people are struggling, is that we have an independent body make recommendations to the government about what a fair pay settlement is.
Whatever that independent body says.
Because it's independent and the government accepted its recommendations in full.
The Royal College of Nursing, as you know, is asking for a 17% increase in wages. Closer to home, the Health Secretary, Stephen Barclay, is meeting with a number of unions to try and avert the largest strike in NHS history due to happen before Christmas. Maeve Cohen is project lead at the Social Guarantee, who campaigned to ensure everyone can afford the cost of living. Thank you for coming on the programme. Do you accept that 17% is unaffordable, as the Prime Minister suggests?
Well, no. What I would say is that nurses are at breaking point. So this is a culmination of over a decade of pay freezes and real-term pay cuts for nurses. So the average nurse is taking home £4,300 a year less than they were in 2010. So there's a couple of points around this. First off, there's no coincidence that this is combined with the highest NHS vacancies on record. So people are leaving the NHS in droves because it's an incredibly hard job that doesn't pay. But with healthcare, this has a really important knock-on effect for the rest of the economy. So the economy is made up of people, right? So it's the sum total of all of our work, all of our purchases, all of our social interactions. And it doesn't take an economist to tell you that, to figure out if I can't get a doctor's appointment when I'm unwell, I'm going to be less productive, okay? If I'm on a waiting list for months and months and months for medical treatment, I'm going to be less productive. If millions of people are unable to work, physically unable to work due to illness, then that's going to have a hit on the economy as a whole. So, yes, we want people to do a good job, and to do that we need to give them a fair wage, and that's true in any sector. But in jobs that provide essential services, such as healthcare, education, public transport, sectors like that, it's not only essential for the sector, it's also essential for the economy as a whole. So we can't afford not to give nurses a proper pay rise.
Clearly the question is about how much. And I come back to the point about 17%. It is unaffordable, isn't it?
Well, we've got inflation at around 10%, and as I say, this is decades of attacks on nurses' wages, so they're not just addressing the shortfall that most people are facing.
Do you know how much a 17% increase to wages of those in the NHS would cost?
As I say, I think we can't afford not to pay it. We can see that the crumbling NHS is having a huge detrimental effect on the ability of the economy as a whole.
But it's really important I agree with your arguments, but it's really important that the reality of this is understood. 17% wage rise would cost how much?
I don't know. I don't have the exact figure of how much it would cost, but I think the framing of it as just a cost is faulty, right? This is an investment. So we need to put money in things that will help the economy to grow, that will build a strong economy. And looking at this just in terms of what it's going to cost is foolhardy, right? We know that if we need the economy to function properly, we need to invest in infrastructure and things like trains and roads and things. Mm-hmm. But we also need to invest in social infrastructure, and that's things like education and healthcare, because the economy can't function if the workforce aren't functioning. So it's not just a cost.
Why they're
it's an investment that will pay back
if it's
dividends.
Not just a cost and it's an investment, why stop at 17%? Why not make it 20% or 25% or 30%?
Well, I think that they're asking for a reasonable amount. They're not asking for the world. They're asking for a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. It's not. I don't think anybody's saying that we should limitlessly say that people can be paid as much as they want. We're saying people need to be paid an appropriate amount for the work that they're doing.
How much does the average nurse inside London receive?
I think the average nurse is around, starting salaries are in the mid-20s, and I believe it's around 30,000. I'm not sure about London in total. It's not my specific knowledge base. But
do you think it is clearly important in the reality of the situation that everyone understands the costs involved in this? Because it is going to go. I take your point about investment, and of course we need to invest in having nurses and doctors.
I think we've spoken enough about costs. I think all that we seem to talk about is cost. All we seem to think of is that the NHS and public services as a whole are some sort of drain on public finances. They're absolutely not a drain on public finances. They're absolutely essential for creating a strong, functioning economy. So I think it's very important that more and more people make the point that this is actually an investment. And if we don't have a functioning NHS, we do not have a functioning economy.
Very good to talk to you. Appreciate your time. Maeve Cohen, your project lead at the Social Guarantee, campaigning to ensure everyone can afford the cost of living. Nigel's in Sandwich in Kent on the housing. Hi, Nigel.
Hi there. Hello. Yeah, regarding the housing, when I finished studying law and became a solicitor, I went into private business after that. But I volunteered once a week for a council in South London to legal advice, and they said to me, we've got a rogue landlord in the area, a very big problem. I said, oh my goodness. They said, yeah, it's the local council. I said, why? They said, because the construction of the buildings with the reinforced concrete sections start to move slightly. They were badly built, and damp comes in. There's terrible damp and mold and everything. And there's a real need in the nation for somebody is serious. Even now, there were so many bad tower blocks built, and they just are a nightmare compared to, people who live quite well in Victorian houses even, but these big tall buildings, there's a tremendous need when the government or whoever builds buildings to to build them so they last longer than the lifetime of one occupant.
And that's
it's a
what
real,
you saw,
really
Nigel.
big problem.
You saw the buildings, in that sense, sort of corrupting.
Well, they knew there was terrible problems. It's been going on for years. And as they said, unfortunately, of course, there's also a problem with private landlords, etc. But I couldn't believe it. I thought the big problem was going to be conniving private landlords. They said no. It was councils that, and apparently now in one of the big South London boroughs, there's 100 blocks of flats where they had a fire because the outside was in 97 of their 100 blocks of flats haven't been checked. Don't pass fire regs either because they've got these fiberglass balconies and wood balconies and all sorts of rubbish.
Well, that's definitely. I was going to make the point actually that we've seen the inadequacy of some of the buildings through not just what happened at Grenfell, but what has been the arguments that have happened subsequently about the cladding on buildings. Nigel, that's a good point. Thank you for the call. 03456060973. In a few moments' time, we'll talk about the missiles that have struck the Ukrainian capital again and President Zelensky's 10-point peace plan. 5:46 news headlines. Amelia Cox.
The government says the death of a toddler exposed to mould in social housing is unacceptable. A wave of Russian airstrikes have hit a number of cities across Ukraine, leaving one person dead in Kyiv. And the England and Wales men's teams are travelling to Qatar ahead of the start of the World Cup on Sunday. LBC weather, rain moving northwards tonight. It will be followed by scattered showers for southern and western areas, lows of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. It's slow on the M1 northbound. There's a lane closed between junction 11 for Luton and 11A for Dunstable because of an accident. And on the M25 clockwise, it's slow because a van has broken down between junction 24 for Potters Bar and junction 25 for Enfield, so one lane is closed. In South Ruislip, West End Road stays closed both ways between Bridgewater Road and the A40 because of an accident, so there are queues. On the tube, there's no service on the Victoria line between Victoria and Brixton and severe delays on the rest of the line. That's because of an investigation at Vauxhall. Angel Station on the Northern Line is shut because the escalators aren't working, and London Overground have severe delays from Stratford.
Check your eligibility now at barclaycard.co.uk.